I know from the work of SheEO and other organizations that support women entrepreneurs that women are far less likely to have access to finances to support them to grow their business. And I've experienced that myself, and I wanted to support other women in business.
The whole point of SheEO wasn't to be anti something or to, be against the current forms of funding. It was really to rethink, what does funding look like in organizations and startups that were women-led.
It's so amazing to see women who are not just about the talk, who are about, the action and putting up capital and, sharing resources and connections to make sure that we do build across and that we do, really take each other, with each other as we all, grow.
Because of the exciting and amazing experience we had, we knew we really had to invest in this ecosystem that we truly believe in and found so valuable.
It's really a delight to see the spark in someone's eyes when they hear about this radically generous model for revenue generating women and non-binary led businesses that not only exists, but works.
There was just an understanding that we were all doing some very powerful work. We all were at a crucial point in our ventures where we needed the funding that we needed. So I was just very happy to see us collectively demand a bigger pie.
Welcome, everyone. Isn't that video incredible? That music? Whoa, I need that music every time I walk into a room after COVID is over, I'm telling you. We had to interrupt over 225 people that were still networking from the last session to come onto this session. So 2 hours later, and everyone's still creating community. So amazing. Welcome to session 2 of the SheEO Summit Finance.world and presented by RBC. Thank you so much. We're so glad to have you here with us. I'm going to share my Indigenous protocol that I actually learned during the SheEO Learning Circle. I'm Hannah Cree, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a white, cisgendered woman learning and practicing daily on decolonizing myself. I was born along with 3 generations of my family on the stolen lands of the Coast Salish territory, and I currently live, work, and play in Treaty 6 and 7 of Alberta. I'm a cycle breaker and a rule breaker in my family of origin. I'm here to listen and then amplify the conditions of this world to dream a new way into being. I stand for humanity and equity, and I'm using my sacred rage to transform my pain into beauty and connection. I am a SheEO Canadian venture and an activator. And I can say that I would not be standing here today if it wasn't for the SheEO community. A year ago, in the first week of COVID, I lost 95% of my restaurant clients. This community has given me the nutrients, the support, and more importantly, the time and space to heal and dream again. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Today, we're going to talk about how we can activate our money for good. Because as women, we are 51% of the population. We hold 80% of the buying power in the world, and women are about to inherit the largest wealth transfer in history. It's not that we don't have enough money in the world. COVID has shown that we can find trillions of dollars, but it's about how money is valued and allocated. So let's start reimagining what this can look like together. Our event is being live captioned by Otter AI, and we're going to drop a link in chat there. So please click on it if you want access to captioning. Live captions will be available throughout the breakout sessions too. And the SheEO Summit is also being visually recorded live by Laura of Swoop Media. So see that link in chat if you want to watch this live creation happen in front of your eyes. So we're here for finance.world, and tomorrow we're going to be doing 2 more sessions. We have systems.world and mindset.world. You don't want to miss those. If you haven't already, you can check out the Summit app. Everything is in there. There's session details, decide what breakout groups you want to join, and you can meet the speakers. You can connect with attendees from all over the world. We have over 2,300 people registered. So please go in there, but stay on Venue for the breakout sessions because that's where all the action is happening. We also encourage you to live out loud and share your experience on social. So what better way to celebrate International Women's Day than, of course, talking about all these wonderful women that are working on the world's to-do lists. So let's use the hashtag IWD2021 and be sure to tag and follow SheEO. We would not be here today if we didn't have partners. And so there is a big, great gratitude. Use the emojis, the hearts, the claps in there for the Government of Canada, RBC, the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, Shopify, and our event platform is Venue and Brandwashed. So let's show some partners our love. Yes, amazing. Thank you. For our finance.world session today, we're going to hear from amazing speakers. We're going to learn about new ways women are using their money to create change in the world. And later, we're going to go on to networking in our one-on-one pairs. And I want to do a special thank you to RBC, who is our track partner for finance.world, a big supporter of SheEO and our SheEO ventures. I want to shout out almost over 100 activators and team members from RBC are joining us today. So thank you so much for your support and your radical generosity for sharing your insights with us. So before we kick off into the program, let's do a quick tour of this event platform called Venue that we're on for anyone that's new. I want to make sure that your profile is totally up to date. This is so helpful in networking. You need to have your LinkedIn, your Twitter in there. So make sure you have your name, your headline, all of those information, and that goes right through on Venue and the Summit app. For chat, use the chat. This is how we can interact with each other. If you haven't already, introduce yourself in chat, where you're coming in from. Of course, I'm coming in from Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6. The emojis. Let's see more emojis. Can we get all the emojis going? This is really great for our speakers. They need to see how you're interacting and anything that you love that they're saying, please click on those emojis and interact with us in chat. Great. We are so ready to go. I am so excited for what's coming up next. I'd like to invite up on stage Tracy Gray, founder and managing partner of the 22 Fund and a 6-time SheEO US Activator, and Vicki Saunders, the founder of SheEO. They are going to take us behind the scenes on how we allocate our capital at SheEO on our own terms and what it means for the rest of the systems and structures. So please join me, all the emojis for Tracy and Vicki.
Hey, Trace.
Hey, Vicki. How are you?
I'm good. All right. So can you just tell everyone who are you and what is a 22 Fund? Let's start there.
Who am I? Well, I'm Buddhist, so that makes me go in a different direction. But I am the founder and managing partner of the 22 Fund. I am a former, my business partner says you can't be a former, but I was an engineer on the space shuttle program, started there. Been in a variety of businesses and industries, and now in venture capital, private equity at the 22 Fund. 22 Fund is an early growth fund. We invest in companies to increase their export capacity, and we call ourselves holistic investors because we have multiple impacts we are trying to have. In general, our two biggest impacts are building generational wealth for women and BIPOC entrepreneurs, and also to create the jobs of the clean quality jobs of the future in underserved communities.
Awesome. I love everything that you're doing. It's so aligned, and it's been amazing to get to know you over the last 6 years. But it didn't start out quite so amazing, did it, when we first met? Let's talk about that. I still remember exactly where I was sitting in this restaurant in LA when Delilah introduced us. And she's like, you have to get Tracy on board. If you're going to do something in LA, Tracy has to give it the blessing. So I sat down, and then you went.
Well, I was like, what? This isn't, I can't make any money off this? What are you talking about? I thought it was on that boat, but no, it was at dinner when we did that. We met
at dinner, and then the boat was the changing.
Okay. Oh yeah. Well, I just wanted there to be a return because, I had started We Are Enough, and Delilah was a co-founder, and we were trying to get women to invest in women and stop giving away their money. But as I know you now, and I always like the Vicki effect and what will Vicki do, I understood where you were going and finally agreed. And I think I even started crying, which is an odd thing for me on that boat. But yeah, you know, I just understood you were trying to do things differently. You weren't trying to have that same return philosophy, let's just say, that is in the old ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is just such a huge, I bring this up, not to shame you, my friend, at all. It's like what I have struggled with a lot, and I wonder if you're struggling with this too. I mean, you're going to be the first woman to raise a $100 billion fund, first Black woman on her first fund, which is staggeringly amazing. And just the number of things you have to break through in order to do something that hasn't been done before is so, so challenging. And we all need to imagine a different way of making things happen. Like, I don't know if people on the call understand this, but first-time fund managers, so your first time that you want to launch a fund, have a very, very, very hard time doing this because everybody wants to know what you did before. Well, it's like, hello, it's their first fund. They haven't done it before. Well, how do you know we're going to be able to do this? It's like, well, how did anyone ever get started? And the only way people really got started is they had these incredible networks and guys invested in guys and got things started. And that's how it went. And if you don't have like a super sticky, amazing, deep network, you can't get started. So I wonder, so that's just background for people who may not know the struggles along with this. I wonder, as you've seen the racial reckoning in the US, we've witnessed a lot more energy around getting capital into non-white men's hands. Have you seen a shift? Is something changing for you as you're out there?
Well, I think it's a little more insidious than you described it, right? So when you're raising a fund, the traditional LPs they want to make sure you have a track record, the team has worked together, you've invested together. There's a whole list, but they're all catch-22s, right? Because if 98.7% of all assets around the world are managed by white men, first, how do you even get into those firms to get a track record? One, those guys don't die fast enough, so you know they sit there forever. So I can't get into those firms. And then you say we need to have work together. But if I can't get into the firms, how am I going to work with that person? And then you have to invest it together. Same thing. If I can't get into the firms where I can get a track record, that I can work with someone and we can invest together, how does that work? But it's used to keep us out of the system, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the same things are being still said. There's a lot more interest, but not a lot of checks being written and not fast enough. And you'll see this, the funds are super small, the ones that are being funded. So I have hope, but from my colleagues that I see out there also raising, it's still tough. And it's doubly tough if you're a woman, and then if you're a woman of color, triple.
Yep. And so how does this get solved? What are you thinking? We talk about this all the time, like all the different strategies, we're using our influence collectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not the network, because, you know, I have a pretty broad network. So, and I know a lot of people. I think we need to get women to really activate in the way, you know, I always say, and you say that SheEO is the starter drug for investing. It really is. We really have to turn investing upside down. There's so much innovation in finance, but it's all the same people not really innovating. They're just trying to find ways to shift money toward them in different ways and easier. But we really do need innovations. We need to be able to invest differently in the ways that women like to invest, in the impact that women really want to have, along with making money. And then there's got to be somewhat of a mind shift in women. We have to feel comfortable and confident in investing. And there's ways you can do that. So I think I do have hope in the next couple of years it will change, and you'll see more women, especially women of color investors. But if we want more female and women of color entrepreneurs, it has to start with the fund managers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, we've been having a lot of these conversations from the beginning of the start of this year with the Gender Smart Summit, with all the panels that we find ourselves on all the time, saying the same things to the same people, hoping the behavior will change. But one of the things we've noticed is a couple of our activators, at least a couple that I know, have stepped in to put money into your fund, to invest in you because we love you and we want you to succeed and thrive. And anyone else who hasn't seen the 22 fund, hasn't met Trace, please reach out. We'll put the link in the chat so that you can talk to her. She's literally in conversation with the who's who of the what's what, the billion-dollar doodles out there. And this is the moment, right? We want you to be the first woman to have her first fund be $100 million and then go allocate that and show everyone else what's possible. So we're massive, massive fans of what you're doing.
Thank you, Vicki.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard.
Right? I can't complain. I gave up complaining for Lent.
Okay.
Don't make me complain.
Whole month? When does it end?
40 days and 40 nights. It's harder than being a vegan, let me tell you.
Maybe we should all go on that little journey with you. I think that would be amazing. We were, from the very beginning, you've really been vocal to me as well about making sure that we're funding Black entrepreneurs and getting more and more applying. And we were very thrilled in the US this year to have an all African-American cohort, which was amazing. And I really do hope that it goes both ways, right? The entrepreneurs with the incredible innovations showing up more and more and getting funded will help more and more investors come in as well, right? So it's this sort of two-sided piece, which we hope will shift things. Are you seeing anyone out there that's doing a great job at this? Moving capital in the direction that you think it is?
Well, I mean, you are, because you decide. We talked about this before it was in fashion, before so many tragedies happened. We talked about it, and you were very intentional in bringing in more women of color. You mean from a LP or a fund manager? LP?
Yeah, LPs, yeah.
I'm not really seeing it. And this, the point is we need to scale.
Yeah.
Right? If it's just one or two, we're not going to scale. There are literally hundreds that invest in white men. And if I name you, someone who's doing fairly okay, I'm not sure why to even do that right now. We need to have this scale, and
2030. What does it look like?
Well, that's only
I
mean, this is a decisive decade. We've got to have a sense of urgency around racial, gender, climate, all the justices you can think of. But I do believe in the next 2 to 3 years that you're going to see a massive shift, all by women, frankly. I mean, you can feel it. All of us can feel it, right? We can feel the men, and I love men, but that last vestige of some of them gripping on to the power. And that's why everyone's like, what's happening? But I think the universe is telling us that we have to do everything different. And it has been telling us that for a while. And now it's pointing right at it. From the pandemic, how it's hitting women, the quote, she recession, which I'm not sure I like that word, but it's more of a we recession, meaning that anything that happens to women will hit our communities harder. So I think women are just going to be like, screw it, I'm tired of this. I'm just taking over. So I think it's going to be, that's what 2030 looks like.
Let's do it. Thank you for everything. Tracy Gray, the 22 Fund. Fund her, amplify. Thank you very much, Trace. Back to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Vicki and Tracy. Tracy, I was so hit by the 98.7% of all assets around the world are managed by white men. So big opportunities for us to change this. And so we're going to go next up. We have a panel discussion on funding the 99%. I am deeply passionate about this because less than 1% of companies actually need venture capital funding. And 99% of our economy is made up of small and medium-sized businesses. We actually need a totally different models and approaches for the rest of our economy. So I'm really thrilled to welcome our panelists, Cathy Bennett, Tracy Gray, Cahn, Nadine Spencer, who will discuss how to fund the 99%.
Thanks, Hannah. It's exciting for me to be here to host this amazing group of women, considering that I've had a little bit of dabbling as a former provincial finance minister and also a minister status of women. I sit on the board of SheEO, and I'm excited and humbled to meet these fantastic women with those of you that are in the audience tonight. So we heard a little bit about Tracy as she spoke to Vicki. Cam, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll go over to Nadine.
Hello, audience, and thank you for having me. I'm so proud to be here on International Women's Day, which at iFundWomen means it's every day, literally 365, 24/7. And so just brief intro, I'm the founder and CEO of iFundWomen. iFundWomen is a funding marketplace that connects women-owned businesses around the world with funders who want to support them. And we've got 4 products inside the marketplace, from a crowdfunding product to an ed tech, which is like a startup school, teaches you all the things you need to know about not only raising capital, but also running a business, which is, part of the sort of funding gap problem is like, how do we get the best funding, which is revenue from customers? And we've got iFundWomen of Color, which is a specific platform to support BIPOC founders. Very proud to announce that we have brought iFundWomen's funding volume up to parity over 4 years within 1 year of launching iFundWomen of Color. And we've got our enterprise brokered grants product, which allows big enterprises to deploy grants to their potential customers. And we have a great thing going on in Canada. I know we have a lot of Canadians in the audience. So if you're a Canadian entrepreneur, Visa in Canada wants to fund you. So go check out iFundWomen and search around for Visa Canada's grant program. It's going on right now. So happy to be here.
That's great. Nice to have you here, Karen. Nadine, you've been extremely busy. No pandemic has been able to keep you slow. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what you've been up to for the last year, especially with the work that you've been doing with the Black Business and Professional Association and the exciting things that you're up to.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be here. Cathy, thank you for your role in this. And Tracy, I have to say, we have to connect, because if everything needs Tracy's blessing, I have a whole bunch of amazing women that needs to have Tracy's blessing. So we have to talk after this. When the pandemic started, I remembered clients reached out to me and they said, what should I do? Should we pause? And I said, absolutely not. We cannot pause. We have to push forward in a major way. And that was, of course, wearing the role of my marketing and communications agency. I'm the CEO of Brand EQ Agency, a strategic marketing and communications firm. And we do our work through really amplifying the voices of our audience. And we do a lot of that in the minority space and then diverse space, and also in the women's space. And I volunteer as the president of the Black Business and Professional Association. We are a 38-year-old organization that works to address equity and create economic opportunities for Black business and Black professionals. We also have a booming youth startup, Black youth startup, because we recognize that 40% of Black youth who go on to post-secondary studies, they do not graduate because of systemic challenges. And so what we see is a huge sector in Black youth startup. And of course, what we recognize and what we're here to discuss is that, the lack of capital. And because I'm from a Jamaican mother who says, Nadine, when you start a business, don't worry about the money. Just you start the business and go forth and the money will come. Sometimes that the money doesn't come, but it's the innovation that we have to pull to the table to bring the funds. And I think part of that innovation, which I'll get into, is some of the work that we're doing with the federal government on the Black Entrepreneurship Program. Because one of the things we recognize as women, as Black women in business, is that we have to find a way, because there's no option. And so with the organization, we work with different sectors and partnerships to make alternative funding available. And so I'm looking forward to having this discussion.
Excellent. Well, Tracy, we had a chance to get to know you a little bit as you had a very intimate chat with Vicki, which is always fun. But I have to say to the audience, if you haven't checked out Tracy on a podcast that was hosted by, I think, Echo, I would strongly encourage you to go listen to the podcast and learn even more about Tracy. It was a very empowering podcast to listen to the weekend, Tracy, so I'm glad I got to share it. Tracy, you've been in the business of helping raise capital in various ways for a long time. I mean, you've had a number of things that you've done. Can you tell us some really specific things around, that you've done even before you started this incredible journey to raise $100 million fund as the first Black woman to do that in the U.S.? Tell me a little bit about what you've done in the past.
Well, like I said with Vicki, I started as an engineer on the space shuttle program, but went into venture capital in 1999 and just loved it, and have been in and around helping entrepreneurs raise capital since then and investing. But I saw very early on that it was mainly white men. We were literally giving $2 million to two guys in a garage and an idea. And I just didn't, from being an engineer, it wasn't logical. And then being raised from parents who believed in social justice, it wasn't fair. And that has driven me for a very long time. And I've always been looking at the nexus between private capital and economic development in communities, and how you can leverage the two beyond philanthropy, but investment to change communities and grow wealth. And so in 2015, I started a nonprofit that's still going on slowly, but we're doing a big global campaign this year. It's called We Are Enough. And the We Are Women are enough to invest in women-owned businesses or with a gender lens on the capital markets, especially women of color. I saw for a very long time there were a lot of people trying to create more women entrepreneurs or fund managers, but no one was talking to the everyday woman from the bottom of the proverbial pyramid to the top of Wall Street, talking about the power of money and investing. We'll give away a lot of money, but for some reason we won't invest it. And you literally giving away money and losing money when you do that. So We Are Enough is going to be launching a campaign this year to get 3 million women over 3 years to invest in women-owned businesses or with a gender lens. And if we're successful, we'll move $3 billion toward women and their businesses. And that's never happened before. So we have a bunch of partners from around the world to help us doing that. And if the pandemic time doesn't change things, we should be able to launch in the third quarter.
That's fantastic. Karen, one of the words that keeps coming up when we talk about money and we talk about investing it as women is the word confidence. And I had to say, when I read your bio on your company website, I was struck with the power of confidence in your bio. So can you tell me why that's such an important word to you? And also maybe tell us a little bit about the 3 core principles of capital coaching and connections that is such an essential part of the iFundWomen.
Cathy, that's fascinating that you would get confidence from my bio. You know, I think that, so much of what Tracy, and I'm sure Nadine and I are all going to be speaking from a similar script, which is good, because we're ladies that have been doing this for a while, is that, so only 1% of companies, regardless of the gender of the founder, actually can raise venture capital. So it's not that they don't need venture capital. Venture capitalists, in my opinion, are just funding the wrong stuff. Not always, but by and large, and funding the same people. So I'm sure you've talked about that a ton. We're not going to go into the algorithms. We'll leave that be. But as we're talking about the 99%, how we fund the 99% of startup founders who don't get venture capital, it's not that we don't need it or shouldn't get it or aren't VC appropriate, because we sure are. It's that it's not accessible to us. So in the States, we look at, when we started iFundWomen, it was started by 3 white ladies, okay? And we were our own customers. It was Sarah, Kate, and I. We are second-time startup founders. Our first startup was a spectacular failure. We could not raise capital to save our lives. And these are 3 white, 1%ers in New York. I came from Google and YouTube, super highly connected, all 3 of us. We could not raise capital to save our lives. And we thought to ourselves, wait a minute, if it's this hard for us, how hard must it be for our sisters of color, who are the majority of women entrepreneurs, to raise capital? So we literally pivoted. We sunsetted failed startup number 1. And I was like, we're not doing that anymore. This problem is a massive systemic problem. And we knew that not only was only 1% of companies getting venture capital, but, for women founders in the US, $300 billion is deployed in VC roughly every year. And that number didn't go down during the pandemic. Yet women as a group, women-founded companies received in 2020 2.3%, and BIPOC female founders received 0.64%. I'm sure you guys have talked about data all day long, but if you didn't, those are the numbers. They're egregious and disgusting. But then when you look at the rest of the financial services system, who are also providing funding options for early stage entrepreneurs, i.e. really crappy loans where we get higher loan rates and lower loan amounts than our male counterparts. In some states, including some blue ones in the US, you need to have a male co-signer on your business loan for realsies. New Jersey, thumbs down on that. This happens. So the systemic racism and biases that are littered all over our financial services system vis-a-vis startup funding have been here for centuries. You know, the algorithms are all whack. So the way we thought about building our product was we looked at the holistic approach to capital, coaching, and connections, because we know from the research that, sure, most women are going to tell you that the lack of access to actual capital is the number one barrier to them starting up. But almost half of women will tell you that the lack of access to specific subject matter experts, not necessarily mentors, not inspiration, but subject matter experts who can literally show you tactical, practical information on how to start a successful business, that is sorely needed. And that's a barrier to them starting up. And then the third barrier, particularly for our founders of color, which is actually the second largest barrier besides for capital, is connections, access to connections, to follow-on capital, to banking relationships, to all the things. And so we've focused all of the products that we build within the funding marketplace, whether it's our ed tech product, our enterprise brokered grants product, which is where we broker grants on behalf of, Visa, American Express. All the banks are starting to sound the same at this point. I love you all. Thank you for funding women entrepreneurs, truly. Adidas, Diageo, Jane Walker. There's so many brands that want to fund women entrepreneurs and are doing it through iFundWomen's platform, which is great. But truly, we've had to think of so many ways beyond venture capital to get our founders funded. And so that's what we do. We've created $80 million in early stage funding for women entrepreneurs, mostly here in the US, since we've launched about 4.5 years ago. Very proud of that. And mostly proud about the focus on BIPOC founders. And just if you'll indulge me for one more minute, and Cathy, just like get the gong if I'm going on and on. Seriously.
One more minute.
Okay, cool. So and I'm not gonna sit here and be like the white lady talking, about BIPOC founders with Tracy and Nadine here. I've been corrected many times, like it happens. But over 70% of our members are BIPOC founders, and we knew that from the beginning. And so Olivia Owens, who's employee number 1 at iFundWomen, Black woman. I was like, Olivia, what are we doing here? Like, do we have a separate platform? She's like, no, it would be redundant. I'm like, okay, but I feel like we need like a separate place for people to be discovered, because discoverability is so hard on large platforms. So we did a 3-year beta test. What happens if we just have everyone together? And the 30% of white founders on our platform raised 70% of the money. And literally, that was the breakdown. 70% of the BIPOC founders raised 30% of the money. So in early 2019, I was like, Livy, enough's enough. You're starting iFundWomen of Color. We're doing this. And in 1 year, in 2020, in 1 year, we changed the cumulative funding volume of iFundWomen to 51% BIPOC founders and 49% white founders. And I know all BIPOC founders are not created equal, but it's a step in the right direction. And the last thing I will say is, this is inspiration for you everyday women with brilliant ideas out there that don't think they can change the world. You can. Olivia Owens and I are not celebrities. We just are passionate. So I'll leave you with that.
And I'd say confident as well. Nadine, you're investing.
I forgot about that. Like,
no
yeah,
problem.
confident, sure.
Nadine, you're investing a tremendous amount of personal energy into disrupting the systems in Canada, particularly around funding for BIPOC entrepreneurs. I understand that you're leading a group of people who are passionately looking at a solution that's setting up a specific stream of funding for BIPOC entrepreneurs in Canada. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I hear a lot in the women entrepreneurs that we work with, it's the line, don't take it personally, when we're not funded. Don't take it personally. This didn't add up and you can't get the money. And of course, the stat shows, 40% of Black women who apply for funding, they get $0. And so what do we do with that as we're looking to fund our business? And, Karen, you're talking about crappy loans. We have one of our members at the BBPA who shares her story that when she was funding her business, she borrowed money at 25% from a loan shark, 25%, refinanced her home 7 times in order to get her business going. But you know what? The ray of sunlight is at the end of the story. She's viable and she's doing it. And she's now doing, I think, between $5 to $9 million a year. And the next step is she's scaling up to more than that. So it shows you that despite the challenges, it can happen. It can happen. We can make it. When we look at the numbers that Black women are starting businesses at, the fastest rate of any racial group, according to a study by American Express, it shows that, Black women, their businesses have grown, I think 200%. So despite the challenges, and you talk about the biases and the racial challenges and access, this sector is still growing at a rapid rate, despite the challenges. And what does that mean? It means that we're looking at alternate forms of ways to drive our business, alternate ways of funding. And what are they? Many people, of course, go into, the crowdfunding, the family. And as I mentioned, my colleague who borrowed funds at 25%, which is just crazy. But despite all of that, she still made it. And so last summer we did a survey comparing Black-owned businesses to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which looks at mainstream businesses. And when we did the research, it showed that the gaps, there's a huge glaring gap between Black-owned businesses and mainstream. And then when we looked at those numbers, Black women were even at the lower part of that. And the biggest challenge was access to capital. We just don't have the access. We don't have the credit lines. We don't have all of those things. Not only that, when we do have funds, we use our own money. So they max out the credit cards, and then the credit rating is lowered, and then it becomes this vicious cycle of getting funding. But we took that survey with a group of individuals across the country, Groupe Transet, Côte de Neige Community, Black Organization, Black Business Initiative, and the African Center in the west of Canada. And we sort of brought all of that to government to say, hey, these entrepreneurs in Canada, these Black entrepreneurs, will contribute to this economy and this society. And we were now working with the Canadian government to we've developed the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund, which is a powerful tool that will directly impact the ability of Black businesses to get funding, but also in the state of this pandemic to recover from COVID-19, and to thrive in the future. And the National Ecosystem Fund is a part of that. There's 3 different areas. The National Ecosystem Fund, which will support, not-for-profit Black-led organizations across the country to build capacity for in the areas of mentorship, financial planning for Black entrepreneurs, and then also, the Knowledge Hub, which will provide data, which will look at where the gaps are in the for Black businesses, and then, of course, look for solutions to solve them. And of course, the most important part is the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund, working with the financial institutions and the government and the 5 Black-led organizations is to provide loans, of up to $250,000 to Black business owners and entrepreneurs across the country. And with the loans, I think a big part of that is going to be is the training that the Knowledge Hub and the the ecosystem will offer. So that's one of the areas that we have we're working on and still continue to work on with the various financial institutions. We're looking at the lending criteria, streamlining models to improve accessibility for interested businesses as well.
So it's incredible the amount of energy that you're individually investing and collectively investing of your own human capital to make things change. Rapid fire question. Tracy, you talked earlier about innovation needs to happen in the next 10 years. What would be the biggest innovation that you'd like to see manifest itself in the next decade? In 1 minute or less.
Well, it doesn't sound like innovation. But it is when it comes to venture capital, is to invest where your interests are aligned with your company you're investing in, instead of us being extractive or predatory, and make it a win-win, which right now, that's not how the industry is.
Karen, how about you?
To make any real systemic change, we've got to solve the give a shit problem. And the give a shit problem is that whether it's the VCs, the banks, corporations, CEOs of any company, if they don't care about BIPOC folks and creating intergenerational wealth, they're not going to hire BIPOC folks at the highest levels. They're not going to diversify their cap tables, and invest in BIPOC founders. Mm-hmm. So I'll turn that around into a manifestation. I want all the big CEOs of the multinational corporations and the VCs to give a shit. And that it'll solve the problem. It's magic. It really is a magical solution that can happen very quickly. There's not a pipeline problem. There is not a pipeline problem. End of story. Thank you.
Nadine, over to you. What's the most innovative thing that you'd like to see happen in the way of funding the 99%?
Yeah, I think in really looking at data to see who's funded and being innovative and intentional about when we look at the data and we look at the gaps, how do we then look at the underrepresented individuals in our society and find solutions, customizable solutions that fits their particular need, because you can't have criteria where everyone is judged in the same way.
Yeah. So you know what? I'm going to close off by saying what gets measured gets results.
Absolutely.
Big believer in data. And to me, as we look for the next decade, hope isn't an emotion anymore for me. Hope is a choice. And, SheEO inspires all of us to either activate, to invest, to be ventures that are braving to do something that we never thought we were going to do. And to our panelists today who are disrupting the world, disrupting the systems, we're so excited to have you share some time with us tonight. Congratulations on your great work. Thank you. Happy International Women's Day.
Thanks.
And thank you very much.
Happy International Women's Day.
How inspired are you right now? Let's see it in the chat for all those incredible women. Thank you, Nadine, Tracy, Karen, and Cathy. Whew. Are we ready to change the world or what? Let's do this. Thank you. Big thank you to RBC for sponsoring the finance.world. It is so important.